Good morning, everyone. Hello, I'm Dr. Poonam Joshi. My sincere apologies for today as our IT department has some technical glitch. So now I would request Dr. Blossom to give today's presentation on trismus, which is overview and therapeutic management. So we welcome Dr. Blossom. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so am I audible?
Hello.
Can everybody hear me? Good morning. Can everybody hear me? Am I audible? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Dr. Blossom.
Yeah, okay.
We can hear you, Dr. Blossom. Please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, doctor. Thank you. So today's presentation is on trismus, overview and therapeutic management. So the definition of trismus, it can be defined as the inability to open the mouth regardless of any causative factor. So looking into a little bit of history of how this term and the meaning of this term evolved. So in 1800, trismus was only associated with tetanus. But however, by the 1980s, it was identified as a motor disturbance of the trigeminal nerve, together with the spasm of the masticatory muscles with difficulty opening the mouth. And in the last few decades, there is an inability, it is defined as the inability to open the mouth regardless of any etiological factor, which was the same definition that we saw in the previous slide. So trismus also refers, so there are other articles which also give the definition of trismus as a sustained tonic spasm of the masticatory muscles, particularly the masseter and the temporalis, which results in forced jaw closure. So the normal range is 40 to 60 mm, and although some authors place the lower limit at 35 mm. For accurate measurements, we can make use of a vernier caliper, which measures and the distance between the edges of the incisors of the mandible and maxillary. In general, it is said that males display a greater mouth opening than females. And lateral movement, normal lateral movement is around 8 to 12 mm. So the occurrence rates of trismus. It is one of the most common side effects of head and neck treatment, along with dysphagia, xerostomia, mucositis, and radiation dermatitis. Trismus is a disorder in which patients have decreased ROM of the muscles of mastication, as said before. Moving on to the next statement, the incidence of trismus is high and persistent. 30.7% of head and neck patients treated with chemo and radiotherapy, and 39% of head and neck patients treated with RT and surgery at 6 months post-treatment, even with preventive exercises. So it's seen in these many levels of patients. According to some articles, now different articles show different prevalence rates. So according to other literature, trismus has been reported to be present in 5 to 32% of maxillary sinus cancer, 0 to 69 patients of percentage of patients having oral and oropharyngeal cancer, 0 to 36% in patients having nasopharyngeal cancer, and in patients who have been treated for large unresectable tumors, the prevalence of trismus ranges from 3 to 26%. Recurrent tumors, in case of recurrent tumors, the chances are 2% to 61%. Trismus has been reported to have been present in 9% of pediatric patients treated for rhabdomyocytes.
Hello, ma'am. Hello, ma'am.
Yes. Yeah. So,
ma'am, sorry to interrupt you. Yes, ma'am. Full screen is there, ma'am. Ma'am, please continue.
Yeah. Sorry. I'm also sorry for the inconvenience. Okay. So trismus has been reported to have been present in 9% of all pediatric patients treated for rhabdomyosarcoma in the head and neck area. But again, the sample sizes investigated in this particular study were small. The etiopathogenesis and the causative mechanism of trismus. So trismus may either be caused by intra-articular or extra-articular problems. In the head and neck cancer setting, trismus can result from local invasion of the primary or metastatic tumor into the critical structures of mastication. So the muscles involved, if the tumor involves the muscles in mastication, like the masseter and the pterygoid, the neural innervation, the temporomandibular joint, or other supportive structures. So similarly, surgery and RT are well known to cause trismus in this setting of patients. Tumors growing adjacent to these muscles may restrict their ability to stretch and thereby reduce the opening of the mouth. So in a study of 212 patients with head and neck cancer, 2% overall had trismus at the same time of diagnosis, and another 1% overall had trismus at the time of recurrence. In other studies, trismus was presenting sign in 56% of patients with malignant parapharyngeal space tumors, and in 4 to 9% of patients with nasopharyngeal tumors, and in 72% of patients with advanced parotid gland tumors. Surgery in the area of the TMJ or the masticatory muscles may lead to trismus. Now, there was a study conducted by these two people called Ichimura and Tanaka. So it was done to elucidate the causal mechanism of trismus in head and neck cancer. So they studied 21 patients manifesting trismus, of 212 patients with malignant tumors in the head and neck treated in Japan. So the study was conducted way back from 1983 to 91, and 9 patients developed trismus as a result of irradiation in 5 cases and of surgical intervention in 7. Additionally, trismus was the result of fractures of mandible due to failure of materials used for the reconstruction of the mandible. So these were the causes and how the trismus took place in these particular studies and in these particular descriptions. So the other sequelae, okay, trismus may worsen or remain the same over time, or symptoms may reduce even in the absence of treatment. Trismus is frequently overlooked by patients and their providers, as they may assume that the reduction in jaw mobility is normal or that it will resolve on its own. Additionally, patients receiving RT or a combined radiation and CT often require feeding tubes or limit their intake to mostly liquids during the treatment. Thus, they do not realize the slow progressive onset of trismus until they attempt to resume intake of soft or solid foods. So in some cases, or in some cases, it goes unidentified. Now, following RT, what exactly? The etiopathogenesis that follows RT is primarily related to the damage and fibrosis of the muscles of mastication. Studies have demonstrated that abnormal proliferation of fibroblasts is an important initial event in these reactions. And although the molecular mechanisms in these are poorly understood. So additionally, from radiation, there may be a scar tissue arising or as a result of surgery or as a result of nerve damage or a combination of these factors. Regardless of the immediate cause, mandibular hypomobility will ultimately result in both muscle and the TMJ mastication. And studies have shown that muscles that fail to move through their range of motion as little as 3 days show signs of atrophy. Similarly, joints which are immobilized quickly begin to show degenerative changes in the joint, including thickening of the synovial joint and thinning of the cartilage. So this can initiate the onset of trismus. The direct effect of radiation on muscles and ultimately results in fibrosis and contracture with a gradual onset noted at about 9 weeks after the treatment is completed. Now, studies clearly show that there is a significant correlation between the absorbed dose of RT to the mastication structures and the opening of the mouth, whereas the prevalence of trismus increases with the increasing doses of RT. Mandibular opening also seems to worsen as the dose of radiation delivered to the medial pterygoid muscles increases. The probability of developing trismus is reported to increase by 24% for every 10 GY of additional radiation delivered to the medial pterygoid muscle. So patients who have been previously irradiated or who are being treated for a recurrence appear to be at higher risk of trismus than those who are receiving their first treatment. And this confirms that the effects of RT on tissues inside an irradiated volume are cumulative over time. So this is an interesting effect of alcohol, which was mentioned in the article that I read it from, and I thought it would be interesting to share. It has been noted that current or previous heavy drinkers had substantially smaller chance of developing trismus or presenting with trismus before treatment. Being intoxicated may reduce the sense of pain during movement of the jaw, leading to wider opening of the mouth than among those who do not drink much. Perhaps the alcohol also acts as a muscle relaxant and counteracts the laying down of collagen. Now, this is SOMA, which is a subjective objective management analysis. So now we are moving on into how trismus is classified. So one of the ways or methodology used is the SOMA classification. And that is why the expansion is mentioned here. So it was a classification system developed for late cancer toxicities. And trismus is included as a radiation-induced sequelae. And also there is an abbreviation coming up as MID, which is the maximal interincisical distance. That is how it is measured. So, so basically, the SOMA tells us that there are different ways in which I apologize, I think that particular slide is not included here. So there is a grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, grade 4 classification system based upon the amount of distance between the incisors of the maxilla and the mandible. So depending on the distance, it is classified, and whether it is severe, mild or moderate is derived. So MID is basically the distance between the incisors of the maxilla and mandible. So in general, whenever we assess the patient, we could check if the patient has these kind of difficulties on a perceived questionnaire. It's called as mandibular function impairment questionnaire. So we can assess their perceived hindrance in terms of speaking, taking large bites, chewing food for different inconsistencies, any difficulties in their daily work that they have, in their daily activities, if they have difficulties related to drinking, laughing, yawning. Now, about the prognosis of trismus. If left untreated, what happens, or the prognosis is not studied extensively, and hence no results or interpretations observed or obtained. So difference observed with radiation fields used depending on the location of tumor. So if the tumor is not close to the mastication muscles or to the TMJ joint, and the radiation fields that are used are not close to them, then there is a difference observed in the extent of trismus developed. So this has been observed in several studies. And also they say that the use of IMRT has shown to extensively reduce the chances of developing trismus. Treatment of trismus. Early management on mild restrictions or inability is very important. And identifying patients who have limited mouth opening prior to the surgery also helps to reduce the chances of them developing a greater risk of trismus or greater extent of trismus. So if we can identify such patients before, it would nice to caution them about the chances of developing trismus. Now, how do we manage it? So there is the conservative medical management used. With regard to exercise therapy, it can be stretching. So this could be stretching, gentle stretching exercises together with active and passive exercises. So an elaborate description would follow in the later slides. So passive is when the patient himself stretches his jaws using his fingers. So this is useful. Now, why exercise therapy is useful? It can help in strengthening the musculature. It can increase the mobility, improve the flexibility and the blood circulation. Now, if all of this do not work, then we move on to there are options for a surgical management also. Prevention. Is prevention of trismus possible? So identification based on the site of tumor. If it is not close to the mastication muscles, then we can, there are chances of saying that the patient is less likely to develop trismus. However, the use of prophylactic exercise effect is not established. That means if the patient has not developed trismus yet and using exercises prior has not been established. But definitely there are studies which say that earlier intervention is useful and produces good results. This is the classification that I had mentioned before. Sorry, my slides just got wrongly positioned. So the SOMA classification, subjective, objective, management analysis says that trismus can be classified according to the following grades. So grade 2 is when there is 1 to 2 centimeter gap between the maxilla and the mandible incisors. Then 0.5 to 1 centimeter is grade 3 and less than 0.5 centimeter is grade 4. So there is a revised SOMA scale which says trismus is classified into 4 grades. Grade 1 is the MID, that means the distance from 20 to 30 mm. Grade 2 is from 10 to 20 mm. Grade 3 from 5 to 10 mm and grade 4 less than 5 mm. Grades 3 and 4 are defined as severe trismus. A mouth opening size greater than 30 mm was considered to be normal. Now, despite improved survival rates in head and neck cancers, post-surgical scarring and radiotherapy induced fibrosis in the pterygoid or masseter muscles and the TMJ joint can result in adverse functional outcomes related to mouth opening, voice, speech, and swallowing. These impairments may start as early as during the treatment and persist for up to many years after the treatment, causing acute decline in the quality of life that may not return to the pre-treatment levels. Now, consequences of trismus on the quality of life. So, limited mouth opening may result in the following effects. Reduced nutrition can cause weight loss and nutritional deficits. Compromised airway clearance because of compromised mastication and poor bolus organization, and increased residue leading to aspiration of part or all of the bolus. Compromised oral hygiene leading to dental caries and infection. Infection of the mandible may get complicated leading to osteomyelitis. Difficulty in speech and swallowing, Degenerative changes in the TMJ may occur because of joint immobilization or as a result of disuse atrophy. Now, the present occupational therapy and rehabilitation protocol that is practiced is gentle jaw opening within the pain limits from day 5 post-op, in addition to the neck movement, shoulder movements, good posture maintenance, and maintenance of oral hygiene. So the use of jaw stretcher key is started from the 8th to the 9th day post-op. Patient is encouraged to place the key blades between the mandible and maxilla teeth with the ends of the device reaching up to the molars, screwing and thereby increasing the gap together with the provision of adequate torque. Patient is encouraged to keep applying the screw to increase the gap till mild to tolerable pain levels. So within the pain tolerable levels is very much important because the patient will not repeat the exercises if there is too much pain. Now, frequency of use is about 10 repetitions every 2 hours and a gap of 30 seconds between the repetitions. Now, a few other, the scope of occupational therapy in head and neck. This is not specific to trismus, but it's specific to head and neck cancer. So I hope the slide is clear. Now, this is a very, very impressive table, which is very clear in what it's trying to express. So the management states that there are 4 levels of treating the patient. So one could be pre-habilitation, that is prior to the surgery. Now, the second is acute care or inpatient rehabilitation just after the surgery or the intervention. And the third is the outpatient or the long-term rehab. Okay. And yeah, so these 3 levels, they look at the patient. The occupational therapy can look at the patient at these 3 levels. And in the pre-rehab phase, the assessment tools that we could use are NCCN distress thermometer, FACIT, which is used for fatigue measurement, FACT, and the University of Washington, which has released a quality of life questionnaire, and also the Pittsburgh Enjoyable Activity Scale. With regard to the physical intervention, prior to the surgery could be baseline measurements of the cervical ROM, assessment of education on shoulder mobility and posture, instructions on the exercise routines. So prior strengthening of the muscles and structures could also be useful and beneficial for the patient. Functionally, how to intervene pre-intervention is assessment of the ADL, instrumental ADL. That means the higher aspects of ADL, like making a telephone call or buying something from the shop. That is what we call as IADL. Sleep hygiene, energy conservation measures, and work simplification measures. And their psychosocial aspects like coping strategies for anxiety, depression, strategies for improved self-esteem and appearance. Then with regard to the acute care and inpatient rehab, post-intervention, we can again use the scales that were used previously to see what is the difference. And then the physical interventions could be for pain management, cervical ROM, wrist and hand mobility and positioning, facial impairments and interventions, delirium management, sensory stimulation, managing the incisions and drain tubes, managing tracheostomy, lymphedema treatments, management of xerostomia. So bed mobility, with regard to the functional aspects, bed mobility and positioning, independence and self-care, improving the sleep patterns, fatigue management, work simplification. And with regard to the psychosocial aspects, it could be coping strategies for anxiety or depression, appearance and self-esteem, stress management. Now, the same thing applies to the outpatient and the long-term rehab. So the first column, the assessment tools are the same. So we will assess their scores at different levels of the treatment. Again, physical aspects are for cervical ROM, skin and scar mobility, management of radiation-induced fibrosis, okay, which is the trismus, lymphedema, pain management, and management of xerostomia. Correct posture. Functional aspects include correcting the posture, improving sleep hygiene, functional use of bilateral upper extremities, oral and pharyngeal coordination exercises, and psychosocial aspects include coping strategies and improving self-esteem, socialization. So the next slide is an extension of the same. So so I think we can just have a look at it to see what are the occupational therapy related areas and prospects for working. Now, this is the NCCN distress scale that was shown, that was mentioned in the assessment aspects that were shown in the previous table. So this could be used to measure the distress that the patient undergoes. Now, sometimes it's particularly in the Indian setting, it is very common to have ignored the holistic aspects of the patient. For example, the psychological well-being of the patient, what actually the patient feels about the treatment. So if these aspects could also be included, it might contribute to better outcomes in the patient progress. So this is a quality of life measurement scale. This is subjective scale, which the patient is required to score. And this is the FACT scale for the head and neck version, and which also is a Likert scale, which measures the scores for each of the categories mentioned. And it measures the emotional well-being, the functional well-being, as well as the additional concerns. So maybe we can just have a look at what are the titles mentioned there. Yeah. So with that, I would like to come to the end of my presentation, and I would like to thank Dr. Poonam, ma'am, for this opportunity, as well as all the other resident doctors for giving me this opportunity. I hope it was useful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Blossom. It was a very good presentation. So like you presented in your this PPT, so Blossom, can I ask you one or two questions?
Yes,
like one is that we in India or Southeast Asian countries have this unique problem of trismus due to oral submucous fibrosis.
Okay.
And once this oral submucous fibrosis sets in, then it is almost irreversible. And these patients have various degrees of trismus.
Yes.
And so when they come to us for surgery also, many a time, even the basic assessment of the disease is a challenge.
Yes. Yes.
So I had a question that, is there any way so through which you can do this trismus management in the pre-operative for these patients, even the peri-operative and the post-operative period? If you can do that, oh, hello.
Yes,
yeah,
ma'am, we can do it. We can implement it.
Yeah. So do you have any experience regarding that? So whenever there is a trismus because of OSA, what is there any you have any experience regarding the management of patients with trismus?
Personally speaking, my experience in oncology is relatively new. So, but this is what I have from the information I have obtained from research articles. But I can clarify with. I can definitely follow it up, ma'am, and get back to you about how it can be done.
Correct. So, no, why I said this is because this is the regular thing which happens at TMH and ECTREC, and you will be getting such patients mainly who will have these oral submucous fibrosis because of habits, mainly areca nut chewing. They have these fibrous bands, and usually they even after surgery the mouth opening is very poor. And there are not many treatments. Okay, so I had another question. If you had any experience regarding the this trismus problem when the patients are in the post-operative period, mainly when they are receiving the radiotherapy,
the teeth become too sensitive.
Yes.
And there is mucositis also.
Yes.
But I think it is the right way to go ahead and tell these patients to keep on doing the mouth opening exercises.
Yes. Yes,
So
ma'am.
do you have any other alternative other than that solid or that metallic key to give them so that
No,
it is
ma'am.
less
Presently, these
painful
are
or
the
any other way?
devices. No, ma'am. Presently, these are the devices which have been experimented and used, and some benefit is being produced. So the other measure in any research, particularly there are few other splints. So in addition to the jaw stretching key, we also give the mouth block, which is a white color piece which they are required to place between their teeth to maintain the stretch that they have attained. So that is there, and few other options similar to that are present in other settings, but not any other than jaw stretcher key and the other dynamic devices that help to stretch the jaws. There are no other options developed so far.
Okay, and any experience regarding the Therabite? Because Therabite, I think
Terabytes are mentioned in
yeah,
a couple of articles, ma'am, but I do not have experience with that, ma'am.
Okay, we have used in couple of our patients in TMH. It is basically softer than the regular
Jaw.
jaw stretching key, which is a metallic one.
Okay.
But it is usually the mouth opening is not that good or efficient with that, but it is less painful. That has
Yes.
been my experience as a head and neck surgeon.
Yes, ma'am.
I think there is one more question, Blossom, that
Yes.
how do you manage these patients in the how long do you give rehabilitation to these patients of trismus in the post-operative period?
Ma'am, post-operative period, we try to, as I mentioned, post-op jaw stretching is not particularly indicative that it will prevent trismus. So there are no studies. There are no studies which show that it is prophylactic. But however, we can continue the exercises to maintain the jaw mobility, as well as it would help. It would have other therapeutic benefits. But post RT, when the patient is referred to us for trismus management, we continue the stretching. We give them the key. We can continue the exercises till they attain a 3-finger mouth opening.
Okay.
We follow them up at regular intervals.
Right, Blossom. But it means you advise that patients should be started with the jaw stretching from 8th or 9th post-operative day.
Yes.
I saw in your
Yes.
slides.
Yes.
And have to be continued throughout the radiotherapy,
Yes.
whatever the pain permits, and then have to be followed in the post-operative period for how long you said? 3 months at least.
No, ma'am. Till they attain the required opening. About 3 fingers opening should be attained.
Okay.
So till then, they should continue the exercises.
Okay, fine. Thank you. I think another question, do you have any experience of the role of intralesional steroids in trismus due to OSMF?
No, ma'am.
I think that will be made for the clinical. So I think there is some data regarding the role of corticosteroids in trismus due to OSMF. But most of this therapy is mainly useful to some extent if the trismus has not yet set in. But the type of trismus may not be may not have any effect with the use of these steroids.
Yeah.
So in my experience, these intralesional steroids are of no use once the trismus has set in. Should it be routinely practiced in low case? Again, the evidence is not very strong, but when we have nothing to offer, it can be tried because there are not any systemic side effects. So what is the role of coronoidectomy with buccal pad of fat reconstruction? So I think here the question is that after the coronoidectomy, the proposed method is to usually provide a vascularized flap. So most of the time, the practice is to provide a vascularized flap, which can be either a free flap or can be a local flap or a regional flap. So in local flap, many a times the palatal flap is used, which is pedicled on the greater palatine artery. But I understand why you have asked for this buccal pad of fat reconstruction, because it is easy. But I am not sure that because that buccal pad of fat, if you are doing it, it should be quite vascular. And I think it can be used. But the most important part with coronoidectomy is that you should have a dedicated occupational therapist who is providing good oral physiotherapy and jaw stretching after coronoidectomy. Otherwise, we have seen a lot of cases where even after doing coronoidectomy and reconstruction, even again the patients develop trismus. So it is very important that this, again, like Blossom said, a continuous post-operative rehabilitation with jaw stretching is a must. So is there any role of platelet-rich plasma? So, hello. I think I have not much information about this point. If anybody can give any comment upon that, please give. Hello. Hello. Hello, Blossom. Am I audible?
Yes, yes,
Hello?
you are, ma'am. You are.
Yeah. So I think if there are no more questions, I would like to conclude today's presentation. Initially, we had some technical glitch.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, yeah, Dr. Poonam, this is Dr. Mahua here.
Yeah, Mahua. Yeah, tell me.
Yeah, so I would like to add some things, like your first question that if the patient is having a sensitive teeth and how we manage this thing. So as you said that the terabyte component of jaw stretcher key is known as Orabite, and Orabite has got a soft pad which we have used in X-ray. The only problem with Orabite is that it needs to be placed in between, in the front, on the frontal teeth. And in collaboration with our dentist, so we had decided that Orabite can be given to only those patients who have got very strong frontal teeth, because frontal teeth are not meant for forceful walk, which is mostly the molars. So and Orabite is very expensive compared to, here we don't get much private patients, but the patients who are C category and NC, they don't really find it very comfortable buying a Orabite, because the soft pad needs to be changed after a few days. It becomes soggy and it changes. So what we do is that.
And how costly it is? How costly it is, Mahua?
It is
changeover.
Changeover is, I think, three pieces they give, and it costs 1,000 something, and it needs to be replaced in every 1 month or 2 months, because if as the patients need to use it many times a day, every hourly or every 2 hourly, it becomes very soft and soggy. So after some time it becomes not usable. So what we do is, when in collaboration with the dentist, they provide sensitive teeth ointment to the patients, and we ask the patient simply to do the jaw stretcher, use a key along with padding, like 2 or 3 folds of gauze piece or a handkerchief, so that it reduces the pressure little bit on the teeth. But dental treatment is must. So we usually work in coordination with the dentist to solve this problem. And those patients who can afford, so they can buy the Terabyte. But mostly for our patients, it works well if they just use a padding over this thing.
Over the metallic key.
A metallic key, yeah.
Okay.
And
our these local innovations we do.
Yeah, because we have to give some benefit to them. We cannot return them like that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And and there was another question regarding this coronoidectomy. So for these patients, we need to start exercises very soon, and all the trismus related exercises, that is heavily depending on the type of surgery done. We cannot watch up the surgery, but then again we need to think that patient should not land up with trismus also. So it works as a perfect balance that depending on the surgery, you have protocols that when to start jaw stretching. And for coronarectomy, we need to start very early, gentle stretching. And many of the patients, we don't wait for the 8th to 9th day for jaw stretcher key. Even it is possible, we can give start from the 5th day itself. And for some patients, we need to wait till the 8th or 9th day. So
Correct.
it depends on the surgery. And another thing is that these are all overlapping factors, like the dentist also do the jaw stretching, and the neck exercise also is being done by the speech therapist also, because they need neck movement. And then we
Right.
have facial palsy, then we need to do the tongue movement along with the facial muscles, because tongue is the strongest muscle and we cannot leave it alone.
Correct.
So there are lots of overlapping of the interdisciplinary people, and
Yes.
we work in perfect unison so that the patient gets maximum benefit. So
Yeah,
if
sure.
you are confused ever what to do, whom to refer, so you can always have one point of reference, physiotherapy, and we can coordinate with all the specialists, and we can work in unison for the betterment of the patients.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Mahua. So I think if I summarize that, so for a regular case, after post-operative period, if the pain,
Hello, ma'am.
if the patient can be started, usually, hello,
Hello,
hello.
ma'am. Can I add a few points, ma'am?
Can I know who is this?
Ma'am, I'm Kirti. Hello, ma'am. I'm Kirti, speech and
Acha,
swallow
okay.
specialist from HCG Hospital,
Okay,
Bangalore,
okay,
ma'am.
sure, Kirti, please. Yeah, yeah, please.
So, ma'am, to add
Please.
up, actually, we do use 3 mouth opening instruments in our hospital right now, ma'am.
Okay.
One is a metal one, which we were discussing about, which is a Histogag. Apart from that, there are 2 more instruments which we can also include, ma'am. One is a Orabite, and the other one is Triscare, ma'am. Now, Triscare has been introduced very recently after, like, during the pandemic session.
Okay.
So according to a few studies, there are like for each day, there should be a repetition of 250 repetitions for mouth opening exercise using the instruments, ma'am. So if there is adequate mouth
Okay.
opening, like based on their mouth opening, if the instrument can be inserted orally, then these instruments can be used. If at all, if there is no option that we can insert the mouth opening into the mouth, then we can start with the tongue depressors, and then if we can open it to the like adequate, if we can insert the mouth opener, then we can progress with that, ma'am. That is how we usually do here, ma'am.
Yeah.
Apart
Exactly. We also use the tongue
Okay.
depressors for the
Thank you.
patients with
Yeah, thank you
limited
so much,
opening.
Kirti.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So Kirti, thank you so much. I think that was a very good point, that those with very less mouth opening can be started with just the tongue
Yes.
depressor. And you told us about another, I think Trisa bite, you said something.
Triscare
if I'm
and
right.
Orabite, ma'am.
Yeah. So I think eventually we are also going to use, I think our occupational therapist and the physiotherapist department, they work in together, and they will be using them in the future. So that we can provide better care to our patient. Thank you so much, Kirti. And
Thank you,
I
ma'am.
think there is one more question. I will just take it and then we'll finish today's session. So I think there was a question that how should we reconstruct the after we do the bilateral coronoidectomy after severe trismus. After severe trismus, I would suggest that if that nasolabial versus let me just read the question. The question was local flap will be the best choice. Which local flap? Like nasolabial, buccal pad of fat, or palatal flap. So I think there are a lot of series which have shown that even the palatal flap can be a good option after the because most of the time when you do coronary, at least when I'm talking about the trismus due to the OSMF, you end up removing some fibrotic bands also. So if you are going to remove a part of buccal mucosa also, in those cases it will be better if you do reconstruction with the help of a nasolabial flap when we are talking about the local flaps, because that can provide much bigger area. It can give you more amount of tissue. and it is quite vascular as it is based on the facial artery, main facial artery and the vein. And you can do it basically the nasolabial, even you can do it a pedicle flap, or you can do it a islanded flap, which we have started doing at our center. The other thing is when you want to do, if you want to do a palatal flap, the only thing you should be well aware of the anatomy. It's not a difficult flap, but then you should leave behind some periosteum and on the palate. The procedure should be right. And in fact, that is everywhere in any flap. And then when you raise this flap, you can even raise the palatal flap and cover the area of coronoidectomy in that case. But the only problem sometimes is that when you have severe OSMS, even the palate and all the mucosa there is also atrophic and is not in a good shape. It is also having a lot of these fibrotic changes. So I think it will be better to use some other flap other than palatal flap, like a nasolabial flap. And if it is possible, the function, the cosmetic, the financial aspects, and the availability of expertise of plastic surgery, then the recommended would be to put bilateral 3 flaps in the oral cavity in cases of severe trismus. But then we should not forget the role of active physiotherapy, jaw stretching exercises in the postoperative period. I think with this, I thank everyone. Today, because of some technical glitch, we had to, it got delayed. So I thank Blossom and everyone who actively participated in today's discussion. It was really nice to get this perspective from the side of occupational therapists and their physiotherapists. So thank you everyone. Thank you, Blossom.
Thank you, ma'am.